starting from this session onwards, we are going to look at the different kind of tools that are available in Kali Linux for doing a server side attack by a penetration tester. Till the previous session, we actually had been looking at the different type of techniques that the penetration tester would typically do as part of the initial reconnaissance action. Once having this detail from the reconnaissance step on whatever target that he is actually trying to attack, the penetration tester would actually go ahead and try to employ the next set of tools if the target is going to be a server. So, from this session onwards, for the next few sessions we are going to look at the different type of tools that are typically available for the penetration tester to make use of when the target that is actually expecting to attack and bring it down is a server. As we all know by now, servers are basically systems or computer programs that are actually running waiting for requests to come in from the clients, right. So, the clients are the end nodes that will typically initiate some kind of a service request to be done by the server, and the servers are expected to be always brought up first as compared to clients, and then the server will basically perform whatever task has actually been submitted to it by the client. Typically the clients and the servers, although technically they could actually be running on the same system, for all practical purposes you would find them actually running on two different systems connected over a network. So, the server for example could host a messaging application, or it could actually host a game to which the clients from all over the internet would possibly access remotely and try to make use of that particular server application. So, there are different forms and mechanisms by which the clients can talk to the server, and one of the most common ways for triggering any kind of a server application is through what is called as a web server. Among the web servers, there are different web servers that are very popularly used in the internet today, and a few of the very popular ones is Apache web server or WebLogic application server, or it could even be something like the internet information server from Microsoft and so on and so forth. So, all these web servers typically wait for a request coming in from any of the clients on the internet, especially the clients that are actually authorized to connect to this particular server. As soon as the request comes in, they basically have the job done on the server side and then respond back to the client appropriately. So, servers could be a web server, it could be a mail server, it could be a file server and so on and so forth. So, there are potentially lot of applications that I could actually run as a server, making the services of that available to all the clients across the internet. So, because depending on the number of clients a server could potentially be contacted with, the server configurations from the hardware perspective, we will basically see that it has different loads. So, I could actually have a server which is actually going to do lot of processing capability. So, the applications that is going to run on the server, for example, is going to actually do lot of computation, which essentially means that it requires lot of processing power. So, I will actually have the server configured with higher processing capacity, and if at all that application is actually going to be consuming lot of memory, then the server will actually have much more memory configured and made available on that, because otherwise the applications are going to be failing. So, likewise on the storage aspect also. Now, because of the fact that the servers typically in today's internet are very high end servers, having lots of information available with it, these basically become a very good entry point that a penetration tester will actually try to make use of, because more the amount of data for example, or the more the amount of processing that is done in a particular server, the penetration tester will think that he actually has a better chance of getting some very useful data out of this particular system, and thereby this server system would actually be targeted by the tester to sort of successfully penetrate. So, because of the benefits that a penetration tester would get by trying to attack this kind of a system, we will always find that the servers which are compromised, that is basically already successfully penetrated by the tester for very long periods of time are left as it is before the owners basically even get to understand or realize that a particular server system has actually been compromised. What could be the different kinds of vulnerabilities that are there typically on a server? So, for example, if we take a web server, the attacker would possibly concentrate from different perspectives, as we will see with few of the tools down below in some of our sessions. So, it could actually be a server which is running an operating system. So, the moment I know what operating system is running, I could potentially know what are all the different attack points that I can use on that particular operating system. So, for providing the web functionality to be accessible as a server, depending on the technologies that is used, the applications that is used, if I can get access to that list, I will basically be able to find out what are the possible vulnerabilities that are there, and then if I also get to know the different type of TCP ports that are right now open, again based on the TCP port numbers, the attacker would basically come to know on what he could potentially leverage on to get access into the system. So, each of these different types of vectors would help possibly the penetration tester to penetrate the system successfully. Now, there are few tools that we are going to start looking at. So, one of the first tools is what is called as a skipfish tool. So, this is basically an web application security reconnaissance tool. So, this tool basically actually tries to get a complete site map for the target using what is called as a recursive crawl techniques, wherein looking at the initial index page, it tries to find out what are all the different sub pages that are actually possible and available in the tool in that particular portal, and then try to get access to the contents of those individual pages. So, with a very small demo, let us take a look at how this particular skipfish tool is actually working. So, skipfish comes with a default set of dictionaries available with it, and if you really look at there are different dictionaries like complete, dot word list, extensions only, medium, minimal and so on. So, depending on whatever is the file that we are actually going to be taking up here and giving as an argument to skipfish, the amount of time that the skipfish will take to run to completion will become different. So, for example, if you actually select the word list file complete.wl, because it basically contains this dictionary contains a lot of words, it will take more amount of time to complete the tool from getting processed. So, one of the ways by which I could actually specify skipfish is to run the tool from the command line by saying skipfish with the option of what dictionary file to be given, where should the command be output finally, and what is the URL on which this particular detail is required. So, based on all these details, it actually starts running, and then it tells you initially what is the kind of the initial help that will be required for the user to understand. So, once the person has actually gone through, the user has actually gone through this set of initial details that is provided, the user can basically go ahead and press any key, or automatically at the end of 60 seconds the tool will actually start running. So, if you see the output here, it basically tries to do the scanning of this particular URL that we have given. So, we have actually specified the URL as www.facebook.com, and it basically goes ahead and tries to do different kinds of scans and tries to find out the different faults that could possibly be there, like HTTP fault, a TCP fault and so on, and finally it tries to accumulate the statistics. So, it will basically go on for whatever amount of time it takes to complete, or alternatively the user can also press Ctrl C to sort of abort this particular tool run after a certain period of time, if the user believes that he would have actually got all the details by this period of time, right. So, the tool is right now running continuously getting all the details, and then it basically tells at the end of it if it has actually been aborted by the user, it tells that the scan has been aborted by the user. So, if you believe that it is actually taking too much time, and whatever basic set of information that as the user we would have already got, the user can go ahead and actually go ahead and press Ctrl C to abort the running of this tool also. So, at the end of it, it basically tells where is the place the output final output is going to be present, and it is basically an index.html file that it creates, and that file you could potentially open it in your browser. If you see here, it basically has all the details of whatever it could gather from the scan run that was actually happening. So, it basically tells what are the different possible problems that it has actually found out. Each of this could be actually a real issue, or it could be just a warning for the user to take care of to address that particular issue, right. So, password entry form, if you look at it, for example, it says consider brute force. So, it basically gives an idea that there is a password entry form that is here, and I could potentially consider brute force mechanism to sort of use this form, and using the brute force technique that is actually available to find out what is the login and the password combination that will successfully enable the penetration tester to get inside this particular site, right. So, we are going to be looking at, for example, different kind of brute force techniques and the different tools that are there typically for logging in by using a password from pre-established dictionary files. So, there are a lot of tools that are actually available for that, which we will be seeing in our subsequent session. So, likewise, it basically goes and prints the different kinds of possible issues that are there, which the user can basically go ahead and try to look at and see as a penetration tester if any of that could actually be made use of. So, for example, here I have the details of what are all the different response and request message headers of HTTP, from which I could actually get quite a few details possibly. So, the next tool that we are going to be actually looking at is what is called as a Vega. So, Vega is also basically a tool that is actually available in Kali Linux under the web applications banner, and it is typically a security testing tool, again which is used to crawl a website and sort of analyze the page content as well as possible form parameters. So, if at all it could actually gather details about the form parameters, it will basically be able to display that as well. So, let us see with a very quick demo of how this particular tool actually works. So, this is actually a tool that is actually available under the Kali Linux menu option under the web applications banner. So, under web applications you have web vulnerability scanners, in which this particular tool Vega is actually available for us to just click on it and then start the application. So, once the application starts, it opens up with a banner and displays me the opening menu. So, the Vega can actually be used either as a scanner or as a proxy. So, if I basically go ahead and start a new scan, I basically have to enter the URL that I am intending to do a scan. So, let us say that we type www.google.com and then say next. So, here we find that there are two types of modules that are actually present. One, what is called as an injection module, and among the injection modules Vega actually got a few of the settings that is possibly could be made use of, and all those things are actually mentioned here, which could optionally be enabled also by selecting the corresponding button. So, it basically lists down the different modules that are actually available for that, which is what it will actually try to do the testing on this particular site. So, the moment I basically press the finish and the OK button, I get a redirect message, because I had actually typed www.google.com, and it now tells me that it is actually getting redirected to another site called google.co.in, and Vega asks for a confirmation from the user on whether the scan needs to be performed on this redirected site also, because in quite a few cases we would actually find out that it is basically taking us into a different site on which we never intended the redirection to be done, in which case I could actually say that I do not want the redirection to be done on the redirected I do not want the scanning to be done on the redirected site by pressing no here, right, because in this particular case possibly since the load balancing has been enabled on the web server of Google's side, it has detected that this particular request has actually come from India, and so it has automatically redirected from google.com to google.co.in, which is basically an India based Google's mirror server. If we go and decide yes, I want the scanning to be done on the redirected site also, Vega goes ahead and completes the scan by doing all the scan of the modules that has been enabled as part of the initial setting before we started off the scan. So, at the end of the scan it basically tells that there are a couple of information messages alerts that we need to possibly look at, and these get printed here. So, one of them if you see is a message called cookie HTTP only flag not set, right. So, if we go and click on the left bar and then try to get more details of that, it tells us on the right side right frame what specifically it meant by that particular message. So, it basically tells you here that it has detected a cookie that could be set without the HTTP only flag. So, what we mean by HTTP only flag is that with the HTTP only flag, the cookie will be set on the server only when it has actually come from a browser HTTP based browser, but when the flag is not present, it is also possible to access this particular cookie via a script code that something like a JavaScript code that a client side could possibly trigger. So, this is just a security measure that has actually been done to prevent cookies being sort of misused by the client side scripts for example, and since it has been detected here in this particular server, Vega has actually given us this particular detail. So, likewise if I enable other modules, the injection modules possibly, and if those are actually available as part of the vulnerabilities are present as part of the particular web server that is getting scanned, then we will find that Vega is able to capture those findings also and then present it to us as part of this particular scan. So, similarly it could also run as a proxy, in which case it will basically display the details on the proxy related information like cache and the URL accessed and so on and so forth. So, this is again another tool that a potential penetration tester could actually make use of to sort of successfully find out more details about a particular web server or a web portal by getting the details from the pages that has been actually hosted as part of the web portal. Thank you.